Hello folks, and holy crap, it's another RekStarcraft cast. What is this, 2 in 1 day? I'm trying to actually ramp it up a bit, because I don't really have that great of internet right now, so I can't play a lot, so what the hell, I might as well cast. This one is going to be between rYnes, who is our submitter, and his opponent, BLOODYAPPLE. So that is kind of gross, but that's okay. So anyways, if you hear anyone in the background, that's Chris. He's over here too. He's kind of our resident idiot, so he'll probably say some shit. He already threatened to... Yeah, there you go. He already threatened to say some things throughout the cast, and I can't do much about it because, like I said, he's our resident idiot, so he doesn't know any better. I love you too, sweetie. So, I wanted to get something said first and foremost. This computer that is running extreme graphics at 50 frames per second and doing marvelously is made by my buddy Adam, and I decided to go ahead and give him a little plug in my cast. If you need a computer built, he is doing it for people, and he is shipping. So if you go to dohcdragon.com, you'll see his email at the bottom there, as well as some of the computers he's built so far. So if you're in the market for a gaming computer, hit him up. He may actually be able to do a lot better than anyone you could be looking at, and definitely a lot better than Alienware. So it's worth a look, and I'll have the computer specs posted on my channel here in a bit so that people can kind of compare and see just how boss this computer is, but it's pretty damn good. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this rolling, and I suppose I shouldn't be on 8 speed. That's bad. I actually do take a look at the games now beforehand, but I don't actually watch what's going on. I just make sure that the player actually lost, because I had a couple that I got like halfway through the cast, and I realized that they sent me a game of them just raffle stomping someone to show off, and so that doesn't really fit the theme of the cast. So I do look at the game now, unfortunately. It's a bit of a spoiler for me, but I try not to see the important parts. I just try and watch the end of the game. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rolling. And rYnes had a couple of questions here while we're getting things going. First one was, how do I protect an economic build? And actually he said super economic build, so I'm assuming he's meaning, some kind of like hatch first into power droning kind of thing. And the only way you can protect that is with really, really strong scouting. You're going to be relying on the fact that you know your opponent's timings in order to prevent the need for those units, and that's how you're power droning. That's how you're skipping those zerglings. And so that's really kind of the only way you can actually offer any protection to your economy build. But if we go, if we look at some of the pros and look at some of the kind of semi-blind heavy droning that they do, it's just a solid understanding of your opponent's timings, and it's always going to be a bit of a gamble, because eventually they will cut off your scouting, and you're not going to know beyond a shadow of a doubt whether they're going to push or not, because you're not in their head. So just try and do the best scouting you can, and then from there you're just going to have to just kind of understand the timings and get some instinct for it, and that's really the best you can do. So here we've got a drone that's actually very, very smart. That was a very, very good scout on rYnes' part. Just seeing that probe kind of stroll off and get a little confused. And when you see that, well, it's a deliberate action. The probe is going off to plant a proxy and potentially even start dropping some cannons. So very nice job from rYnes. And this is just a scout. What is this? Okay, he is going to be going ahead and expanding. Good. Now this expand is super late, and so that's kind of a concern here. We look up at the minerals, and he was up at about 450 when this started. So he could have actually dropped that hatchery quite a bit sooner, and been much, much safer, even as a hatch first. Now, I don't recommend hatch first against Protoss, because look at all the mining time he's losing to this, and look at, well, okay, that's, look at how much mining time he would have needed if he would have lost if the cannons actually started to go up. Then he would have needed to pull, well, half his drones, probably. So, I really don't recommend hatch first. But nevertheless, that's what rYnes chose to do. And so if you're going to hatch first, make sure you hit that hatchery timing very, very closely. Because you're not really gaining any benefit from hatch first if you go hatch first and then float 450 minerals. So make sure that you don't sell yourself short in that respect. And so we got a pool coming up and a very, very quick 2 gates with a cyber. So this would lead me to believe there may be some aggression coming in here within the next couple minutes. Could be just some early stalker play. A lot of Protoss players like to do this to hatch first because there's not going to be a quick metabolic boost out to deal with that. And so you're going to force some spines. You might even be able to snipe some zerglings for a while. Now this right here, this is unnecessary on rYnes' part. This drone should be mining. It's pretty clear after the scouting that there's no forge going up. And so there's really nothing wrong with pulling the drone back, leaving the pylon there, and just waiting for the zerglings to pop. And that's going to be more than enough. So this, I mean, is pretty significant lost mining time at this point. A couple hundred minerals probably. Well, that's an exaggeration. Probably about 100 minerals. And so we watch here, and good, the rally points are set pretty quickly. Now rYnes could have gone ahead and set the rally point as the hatchery was spawning, and that would go ahead and prevent that idle drone he had there for a second. But aside from that, pretty quick reaction time. So just keep that in mind, guys, when you're playing, that you can actually go ahead and rally your hatchery before it's completed. And that's going to save you a little bit. And I actually like the Overlord positioning here from rYnes. This is good. He's seeing when this gateway is active. He's seeing when it's turning warp gate. He could actually scoot a little closer even. But too much closer, I mean, you know, maybe around here. Too much closer and stalker fire is going to become an issue. They can kill pretty quickly. And so here's where we start to see some of the issues with rYnes' macro. He was asking earlier about, you know, how to make the most of an econ build. Well, one of the biggest ways to make the most of an econ build is to indeed produce lots of drones. And that may seem kind of no-brainer, but if we look at this, he's supply blocked, and we go to production. He's making 4 overlords because of that supply block. Now, if you're going to go an econ build, make sure you're keeping on top of your overlords. Make sure that you are making the most out of the risk that you're taking by leaving yourself on, well, 6 zerglings and hatch first. So in this case, you know, I would have liked to have seen him dropping that overlord beforehand rather than after the fact, and that's going to produce a lot more drones in the long run. By 7.5 minutes, he's going to have... Well, actually, this isn't even an econ build, so we'll have to watch. I should have been watching production. But nevertheless, let's watch some of the choices he's making here. So, actually, I should pause to talk about this because I'm getting a little overwhelmed here. Okay, so we've got a roach rush, a kind of a goofy little 2-base roach rush. 9 roaches and 6 zerglings, and the economy is kind of behind, 4 drones behind. This, I believe, is a bronze game. Actually, I think rYnes might be silver. I should have checked. He's actually a guy who I've played a few games with, so I didn't even bother to check because I thought I remembered it. But nevertheless, this is one of his latter games. But what we need to pay attention to here is a few things. Number one, rYnes is committing to this attack with really no scouting. He doesn't know if there's an expansion going up, which means this attack would be pretty good, or if instead this is in fact a 4-gate and there is 20 stalkers here, or whatever. Don't commit to an attack when you don't have any information to base it on. There should be a zergling at this Zelnaga, this choke. And actually, come to think of it, that is one of rYnes' questions, so I guess I might as well answer that. How many links should I contribute to Zelnagas and scouting? Well, as many as are necessary, 1 for each Zelnaga at bare minimum. By the mid game, by 7 minutes, you should definitely have a zergling on each Zelnaga. 2 to 4 outside their choke, and that's so that you can intercept probes and kill them quickly. So I would say 4 to 6 is typical, and then if you're going to be power droning, that's really all you'll need for a little while. But you know, there's nothing wrong with having more than that. It's going to slow your economy down a little bit, but it's also going to be much more defensible should they push out, because you're going to have that many more already prepared. Just make sure you don't lose them when they push out. You know, if you've got 4 lings here, make sure you're keeping an eye on them, and you're pulling them back the second they move out so you don't lose those lings to the start of their push. But the other thing I wanted to stress is we've got 4 extractors starting up, and this should be 3 more drones. In fact, there's really nothing stopping him from just keeping up with the injections and droning through this while this push occurs. And he would develop a macro advantage even if this push fails. But 100% he should not be dropping these extractors. This is just a waste of drones because he's not going to be able to mine off of that. He's only got 23 harvesters total, and it's going to take 9 harvesters to saturate those 3 extractors. So he really would have been better off skipping that, sitting at 26 drones, and then he'd be pretty reasonable macro-wise. So I think that's kind of the start of where this could be going wrong, because he's not really setting up a very strong economy to follow up this push. And this is kind of shooting him in the foot. So here we go. This push is moving out. And again, one Zergling in front of this could really do him a lot of favors, just so that he knows what he's going into. But we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. Production, good. He is in fact power droning behind this, so that's very, very good decision making on rYnes' part. There needs to be some scouting tied into it so that he knows what he's walking into. And so here he's actually having to scout in the process of the attack. So this is pretty good. This is good. He's expanding. BLOODYAPPLE has not actually saturated the expansion, and this is actually pretty manageable. But look at the management. That's really the issue here. He could have kited back with these roaches, kept the Zerglings up front, and actually maybe even flanked the stalkers, and he would have been in much better shape. So optimally, what he's doing now is what he should have been doing from the beginning of the engagement, and maybe not running this far out. This is actually more of a panic, oh shit, I lost all my units kind of circumstance. But had he... let's back just a second. I'll go a little John Madden on you. I wish I could actually put stuff up on the screen, but I don't quite have that sort of thing set up yet. So immediately, these roaches should be kiting back these zealots. So just, you know, kind of a scoot and shoot kind of thing, like you see some of the top-level Marines users do. But since the roach has a 2 weapon speed, you've got a lot of time. You've got 2 game seconds between each shot, and so you can kite this back relatively easily. And so really, these roaches should be taking no damage from the zealots whatsoever. And while this is occurring, these 6 Zerglings, which may not seem like much, but they do soak up quite a bit of stalker fire, should be pulling up here and flanking these stalkers. If he does this, he's going to be in great shape. Now, I'm going to back one more. I want to see what the army values are. I think he's down a bit, but honestly, yeah, he is down just a little bit, but he's actually up on supply, down on resources, which is pretty common for Zerg, because Zerg units are very supply expensive proportionately, and to their resource cost. So that's not uncommon. Alright, so let's go ahead and play this out again, and just watch this and keep in mind what he could have done here had he been kiting these zealots. This attack would have maybe not have outright killed the other BLOODYAPPLE's army, but at the very least he would have been able to do much more damage than he did. And here we still have 3 roaches and one Zergling left to 5 stalkers. So yeah, I really do think had he kited those zealots, he would have been in good shape. Alright, so let's go ahead and just watch rYnes' follow-up, because that's really going to determine whether this is a kind of a game-crushing loss of units, or whether he's going to be able to keep this going, because currently he actually does have the macro advantage, because he was droning through that. And that was a great choice on rYnes' part, so I really like that. But he needs to get these injections going. He needs to get a few more overlords out, because he is massing out roaches, so he's going to cap out real quick, and he is indeed starting 3 overlords, so that's good to see. But here we see these extractors still aren't really being used, and in fact, these 2, he really doesn't even need those. He could be on 1 and be just fine. One other thing I'd like to point out is there's no metabolic boost started. Even if you plan on going into a roach mid-game, you really should get metabolic boost at the very least for scouting purposes. So make sure that you are prioritizing that. I would say at the very least after this push, he should have started metabolic boost, but really I would have liked to have seen it before the push, and then he could follow up with speedling reinforcements and been in great shape. But, you know, that's not going to be a huge issue if he's going with kind of a defensive roach play at this point. But still, he ideally would have had speed by this point. I can't talk today. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, so more droning, and Let's see how well this is paying off. He's actually really out macroing Bloody Apple. So this is working out very well, and he's getting a good strong creep spread started up here, so that's also very good. And he sees this proxy. I hope he sees this proxy. This is something he should be responding to. This is going to be very bad for him if he lets that stay. And this is just a case of minimap awareness. We're watching from his point of view. It does show on the minimap. So rYnes needs to work on his minimap awareness a bit, because this proxy honestly should have never even been allowed to complete. And if it's actually still alive, okay, good. I was really worried there. If that was still alive at the point that Bloody Apples decides to push, that could have been very ugly. Double Evo Chamber. I like this a lot, especially with how much rYnes is floating. This is going to help get some of that spent ASAP. And so just make sure that if you start Double Evo Chamber, you start the upgrades that are associated with it. I've done this a lot myself, where I'll sit there and go, oh man, I'm behind on upgrades, so, you know, oh, actually we got a fight starting. But yeah, moral of the story, if you invest in Double Evo Chamber, make sure to use it. Still hasn't been started, and at this point, we see that this is where that scouting could have paid off again, because we had 18 stalkers moving in. And at the point of engagement, there was, what, 8 to 10 roaches. Some more spawning now, but it's just too little too late, considering Glio Reconstitution hasn't even started. So this is actually kind of a throwaway on rYnes' part, and there's a few reasons for that. So let's just pause for a second and look at this. We are at 13 minutes, and he wanted to go roach play. Alright, so 13 minutes roach play, keep that in mind. By 13 minutes, is there any reason to not have Glio Reconstitution finished? No, absolutely not. So start Glio Reconstitution the second your layer finishes, which was quite a while ago. And beyond that, if you're going to get 2 Evo Chambers, if you're going to even get 1 Evo Chamber, start your intended upgrade ASAP. Really, with how much is floating here, there's no reason rYnes couldn't be +1/+1 right now. And with +1/+1, Glio Reconstitution, and a little better spending on the roaches, he would have crushed this with no problems. And that's kind of my other big point, is make sure you're keeping your resources low. In fact, let's cheat a little, and let's see where Bloody Apple is. He's at 475 and 688. Now keep in mind his income is much less. You know, even with these drones that have already been lost, rYnes is still up on drones. But nevertheless, Bloody Apple's spending is much cleaner, and that's why he had more of an army. So, well, you know, we can do the math real quick. It's 100 resources per roach after 75 plus 25, and rYnes currently has 4,500 resources floating. Now, give or take, because it's a proportionate to 25 gas rather than, 50 gas. It's not equal parts. And my math is terrible, but I'd say he could have about 45 roaches by now. And given he's got about a 2-to-1 ratio, that's going to be about right. Probably about 35 to 40 roaches. So if all those resources were spent, you can imagine how badly that would have crushed Bloody Apple's engagement with the 10 roaches or so that were already in play, and another 5 that had already spawned. So we're looking at a total of 50 plus roaches he could be countering with right now after he just absolutely decimated this attack. So that's just purely on spending. So rYnes, if there's one thing to work on from this game that could have prevented all of this from happening, it's the spending. If there's one other thing to work on, it's the scouting, which is kind of right what you asked me about. So I really want to stress this. Zergling, right here. Know when that push moves out, and know when you're pushing what you're attacking into. And if you can correct those two things, I think a game like this will not happen for you well into Platinum or so, when you start meeting some of the more intense builds that are more focused. So let's go ahead and play this out and see the rest of how it pans out, but it's looking pretty grim at this point, looking like it's pretty well settled. But again, I can't stress enough just how different this would have looked had this not been floating. That really is the biggest thing to take from all this.
The hive cluster is under attack.
Actually, while this is finishing up, since there's not a whole lot left to talk about, I'll do one more question. How do I stop mass stalkers? Lings don't seem to cut it after a while once they reach a certain critical mass. And this is this is kind of a yes and no kind of thing. Sure, 30 stalkers with plus attack will be pretty difficult to deal with regardless of how many lings you have, particularly if they get to a corner where you don't have a lot of surface area. But nevertheless, lings are still going to be the most economical. The issue isn't necessarily that lings have lost viability, it's that you aren't able to produce enough lings to keep up with their stalker production, and that's more than likely for the same reason we saw here. Even on roaches you weren't keeping up with production, but factor in lings, which are much, much less cost effective, or larva effective, I'm sorry, and then you're going to really have some trouble. So what that means is that you just need to get some in-base hatcheries when you plan on going lings, and even in a situation like this, you could have done well with 1 or 2 macro hatcheries and been in great shape. And by that I mean, you're floating 3,000, what's the harm in dropping 600 minerals worth of hatcheries? It's not going to really impact you that much, and it's going to greatly increase your productivity. So if you can do that, then you're probably going to not really have any problems with mass stalker with lings, because all of a sudden you've got 2 to 3 times the larva production. What's this pinging? Oh, I'm not sure why he's pinging that, because red can't see that. Oh well. Now they're having ping wars. So, actually I guess that was just a warning. Anyways, wow, that is a lot of pings. That is kind of annoying. Okay. Apparently he's pinging that for me. I guess he intended me to watch this. And yes, I see that you're grabbing the gold. I'm not sure. Oh well. Whatever. I'm confused. Anyways, but yeah, just make sure you're producing macro hatcheries proportionate to your needs. And if you're planning on going mass speedling, and you're planning on needing to deal with stalkers with that mass speedling, then by all means, go ahead and get some macro hatcheries. And that's going to make it more than manageable enough, because if you were to take a stalker, which is what, 125 and 50, that is 7 lings worth of resources. If you put 7 lings to each stalker, you're never going to have any problems. So just keep that in mind. You're more than likely engaging with 3 lings per stalker, 4 lings per stalker, and that's not quite as favorable, particularly when they get some upgrade advantage and when they have reached a critical mass where they're starting to snipe your lings before they get into attack range. So that is about it. Hi, Wicked Sick. Shout out to Wicked Sick for messaging me mid-cast. I should have had Busy up. So that's about it. I hope this was helpful for people. Sorry my words aren't quite coming to me today. I guess I either got too much sleep or not good enough sleep. I don't know. I slept for about 10 hours, but I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Or I'm just bad. Thanks, Chris. Ass. Okay. Well, I'm going to go kick the crap out of Chris now. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye. Get off the bell!